What's going on with the felon's health and the DC takeover? Let's look into all of that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos, sharing the videos, promoting the channel on your own social media platforms. It's all greatly, greatly appreciated. And if you've given money to the channel through the Super Thanks, Buy Me a Coffee, Venmo, huge, huge thank you. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. So several people have emailed me and sent me messages, DMs on Blue Sky asking if we could take another look at the felon's health. I never think that's a bad thing to look at. Things can change. There's, some more signs of cognitive decline going on. And then I think we'll do this slightly different. I think we'll look at August, September, October, and November, and we'll do the 9 card spread for each of those months and see if that can glean some light. And then we'll also take a look at the DC takeover. So there's some lawsuits going around trying to get power put back into DC. Um, some of the surrounding states, Maryland, for example, in particular, has said that they won't send National Guards to DC. But what do we need to know? Just what do we need to know about the DC team? So I was scrying on this. Uh, it's not shocking that the devil card popped out. It's mis and disinformation, right? We have the whole, well, not the whole, but most of MAGA believing that crime in DC is up and out of control, when in fact crime decreased quite a bit under President Biden and has continued to decrease under Mayor Bowser. But everything's about perception, right? And the felon is good at confusing people's perceptions. That's just the way it is. So let's take over. It's definitely not based in reality. I think it's going to be important that for any lawsuit to work, that they have the rationale behind it and it not being what um, the administration is saying it is. So we get the hermit card to start off with introspection, really thinking things through. This lawsuit has to be carefully argued, right? Because technically, the Congress oversees DC. That's the way it is. That's why I strongly believe DC will become a state once the Democrats take over all three branches, or the legislative branch and the executive branch. Um, because we can't keep having this. We just can't. I think the administration's in for a wake-up call, by the way. Bombshells and surprises with the Page of Cups and the environment around. Even though they technically oversee DC, it's supposed to be, in a limited type nature, right? So, for example, years ago, DC passed marriage equality before that became the law of the land. And the House at the time, and I think Boehner was the speaker, um, thought about introducing legislation, and Boehner just basically straight up said this wouldn't work because this oversteps Congress's authority over DC. So there are lines there. We get the Queen of Cups. People are empathetic with the people of DC. And we get the King of Swords, consistency, truth, and the environment around. And that's really the thing. If crime was higher when the felon was president the first time, why didn't he do it then? And why now? That I think is going to be the argument. Uh, we get the people at the center of the reading. I like that a lot. The Four of Wands. We get the next generation, the Six of Cups, and the environment around. we all know this is a distraction, right? We all know this has to do with keeping Epstein and the Ghislaine Maxwell story off the front page. The media falls for it every time because, quite frankly, CNN and uh, is just, I mean, their journalists are a bunch of idiots. Dana Bash, particular, and Jake Tapper are worthless journalists that have never broke a story in their lives. So that's why this thing gets blown out of proportion is because the media covers it like this. But thank goodness CNN's influence is waning. Fox News's influence is waning. The OAN, the right-wing stuff, it's not as much as you think. For example, the Midas Touch on YouTube gets more views than any one of those, not combined, but any one of those channels. And in a day, like there's rarely more than 700,000 people watching CNN throughout at any given time. We get the Page of Pentacles, messages coming forward about money. And we get the Four of Cups. The people of DC are unhappy. And we get the Ace of Pentacles. This is a new reality. So DC's trying to figure out what to do. They're being very careful about making the argument to protect their people from this new reality that is the felon. They're willing to spend money to protect the people and let them live, without, military blockades stopping traffic, for example. I think the felon's in for a rude awakening because this isn't consistent with the way that they acted in his first time. It's just not. Crime was higher then. It's not consistent. And, I don't think there's any argument that this is making the city better or safer, or that they're even concerned with that. And more importantly, the people of DC do not want it. So I do think that, let's see what's underneath here. We get the Tower, yeah. And then we get the Ten of Cups. This is good and Judgment. I don't think the courts say you can't have National Guard in the streets of DC. I just don't think they say that because I believe probably the interpretation of the way these things are set up is that it's probably legal. But I do think the courts limit what the National Guard is allowed to do. I don't think, for example, they're going to be allowed to arrest people who aren't obviously committing a crime, things like that. So I do think that situation improves. Okay, let's look at the felons. Let's start with August. We have 2 weeks left, well, 16 days left. So in August, what can you tell us about the felon's health in August? And we'll do this for September and October. Those are the 2 months that I think are the flashpoints. And then November, we shall see. It's about the felon's health. He's clearly deteriorating. He said he wasn't going to negotiate anything without Ukraine. And then on the plane, apparently he was talking to the Belarusian president. And it came out that they're negotiating a prisoner swap. I mean, nothing he says can be believed. One, because he's been a pathological liar his whole life. But two, he's in this demented state now to where I don't think he even knows what I don't think he really comprehends what's going on. So, and it's starting to show. Watch him walk. His gait is troubling from a medical point of view. He's always leaning forward. He's just not. If he's standing and talking to the press, I think you'll always notice he's leaning on his, have to do the mirror image here, his left leg. He puts more weight on his left leg. Um, Makes me think his right side is a little bit weaker, probably from a stroke at some point. We need to know about the bones, how all this. I do feel like energy shifted after the full moon. Um, Even people that, don't normally talk bad about him in my inner circle, don't talk good about him either, but um, are starting to say things like, you know, WTF and WTH. And nobody believes the consumer price index numbers in my neighborhood. Everybody was like, rationing together and giving out tomatoes to people because buying them in the store is impossible. Who did you get the Hierophant to start with on his health? This is the Pope, the Church, his higher self. I think these things are on his mind. Now, when his mind's able to focus. Now, like I described before, his mind is kind of like watching a not baseball, tennis ball bouncing back and forth between two balls. I don't know if you remember the old video game Pong. It was like one of the first ones that came on. You'd hit the ball, then this person would hit the ball. Real rudimentary because it was the 70s, but it's kind of like that, but at a much faster speed. You hit the tower, something's really wrong, which we're aware of. And we get celebrations and freedom. Um, we get the truth in the environment around. I do think we find out more about his health at some point. I don't know if it's in August, but I think at some point they have to kind of release more. Yeah, I mean, messages coming forward. Um, that he's not going to want to hear, and then he's going to deny it, and then it's going to be a whole mess. Um, and we get the magician. I wouldn't be surprised if things come from Elon Musk. Uh, Musk has been playing this weird game of, playing both sides of the Epstein file and then making a comment about how the felon stinks, um, things like that. Now, there's been lots of people that have said that, and there's been lots of things to believe that he's perhaps incontinent and or has some sort of ostomy bag. But the Nine of Cups, the greedy merchant, and we get anxiety in the environment around the Nine of Swords, and we get the Seven of Wands. Okay, this makes a lot of sense. Being on the defense here. So the Hierophant is all about, your higher self, the Pope, the church, the government. So stuff from the government gets released, messages from the government that makes them defensive. My guess is that they're going to have to release it because there's going to be another incident where like his ankles are swollen, things like that, where they just can't deny it. The greedy merchant has messages released and the public celebrates. And we've talked about that. The public is going to celebrate when he goes. It is going to be, you know, a big, big deal for the world. Um, Something's really wrong with the tower card here. I do think we figure out the truth. I don't know when though. I've always thought that it kind of comes after he's left the planet, but we'll see. We might hear things though from Elon Musk, little tidbits that maybe they can't deny. Uh, this is causing a lot of anxiety uh, for both the people in the administration, but also for people in the world, because everybody's in this hanged man type energy of just wanting this chapter to be over. Like people are over it. I don't think anybody has had this many people wishing um, death to come visit, and probably since World War II. And even if then, the population is way more than so. You know, um, India, for example, has the people in India have turned on him. Modi said he was going to be our greatest friend, and then it turns out all these tariffs, and then you can't buy Russian oil and stuff. So judgment underneath, judgment's coming, and I do feel like this is the Christian take on what happens after death. He does currently have a good support system for his health at the Three of Cups, but things are going to come to the surface with the card. So August is going to be, I think, a relatively quiet month on his health. But I do think there's going to be incidents in August that are going to have to be explained. So, okay, let's move to September. He tests about Felon's health in September. Okay, so we have the eclipses in September. She wrote down their exact dates. One's the first full moon in September, and then the one on the new moon in September. See, so the one's towards the end of the month. Trying to just do some math in my head really fast. Yeah, so the new moon should be like August 23rd, 24th, something like that. And then, yeah, so one's like the 7th, around the 7th, give or take a day or so. And then the other one's around the 21st, give or take a day or so, if my math is correct. Um, Something around the eclipses, he was born on an eclipse. Astrologically, I think I've heard, I'm not an astrologer by any stretch, but a little bit. This does seem like a pretty precarious month. September does for him, as does the rest of August, by the way. I don't think this goes away. Need to know about his health. September. Yes. The image of the Five of Pentacles, you know, health definitely worsens in September. Just how bad it gets, I guess, is the question. The imagery that I got was fall decorations. Now, this could be, pumpkins and leaves, could be more October, could be around Thanksgiving even, could be sooner. They're in the stores. Um, the image exactly, I think, was a shopping cart full of fall decorations. Um, and then somebody reading that he had passed, and then the store starts murmuring around. So really, it feels like it could be any point from here until Thanksgiving. I don't think it goes that long, but well, I mean, that was what I was seeing in the water, and here it is. Five of Pentacles. His health gets worse in September. And that's the main focus of the month, is his health deteriorating. This is interesting. We do get Temperance, which is the card after death, but also could be moderation. Feeling trapped, feeling confined, the Eight of Swords. Let's keep going to see what that means. Yeah, I mean, we get the Death card in the environment around. If death isn't there, then um, it's definitely approaching. At the center of the reading, we get the Star card. This is hope. Yeah, it's hope. And it feels like it's the world's hope, the people's hope. We get the Moon card, things being uncovered, things coming to the surface. And we get the Seven of Wands again, being defensive. And yeah, the Ace of Wands, new leadership. Makes you wonder. And we get the Nine of Swords, anxiety. So I think we learned that his health is worsening. And then I think a lot of people have hope that this time period ends. Now, when he does go, it's not like things get dramatically better overnight, but things get more predictable, which is of itself a relief. But there is a lot of anxiety. So I don't know if he actually goes in the month of September, but uh, the administration will be on the defensive. People will be very hopeful that he is contained or thankful that he's contained. Um, we might not see many public appearances in September, if any. It is possible this is the month that it happens. It's very possible because we have firing new leadership, and then we have death, and then we have a period of time after death. And the period of time after death is where we would get the firing new leadership. And then we get the Moon card, things coming to the surface, things unfolding. Underneath in September, blind choices, yeah, celebrations, and then judgment. And again, this judgment card doesn't normally feel like this, but this judgment card feels like the Christian view of what happens after death. Um, so could be September. Okay, so we need to be cognizant of that as we look at the cards ahead, that it could be September. Could be. I always thought, September into October was around the right time. Now, if death had been in the center of the reading there, that would have probably been a stronger indication. It didn't need to be, because what's the greater event, him dying or people having hope again? I don't know. I think hope wins, right? So, all right. So, what about his health in October? His health in October. Health October. Let's give these a good shuffle. I think like images of carnations in the scrying bowl. Lots of them. Yeah. And also just like hearing kind of like it sounds like, kind of wine glasses or champagne glasses making a toast. which I do think there'll be a lot of that as well. It's going on in October for the world card completion, the end of a cycle. Um, Messages coming forward. Moving out of troubled waters. Deceit, deception, dishonesty. I mean, the Seven of Swords is never surprising when we're talking about the felon. It just, I mean, it is the card that embodies his energy. The Queen of Swords sounds like smooth sailing. Um, like a kind of a where do we go from here feeling. We get the Hierophant, the church, the Pope, the courts. In this case, I think it's the church, not necessarily the Catholic Church in this case, but a church. Um, we get things coming to the surface again with the moon card, but also some volatility in the world and in the stock market in particular. Don't take financial advice from me. And the Wheel of Fortune. I mean, this is just a tarot reading, so still take financial advice from me. The Devil. So we get completion. Then we get kind of this sense of relief with the Queen of Swords. And it's relief from what? It's relief from the chaos, from the constant mis and disinformation. It's not that there won't be mis and disinformation anymore, because there will be, and there will be toxicity. It's just that it's easier to discern for the mass populace that has been deluded. So therefore it's less power. Like it loses its power at some point. And I think that's when he leaves. So we get the moon card, things coming to the surface, uh, people taking a deep breath and hoping that we're moving away from the trouble. And we get messages coming forward about deceit and deception. And I think this has to do with deceit and deception about his health. We get the Wheel of Fortune and the environment around. Now, to me, this is a really good card because it's saying, the country could go this way or that way. Like there's now a choice. And I think this is just representing the church where I'm seeing the carnations, because I think there's a funeral um, in October. It feels like he's gone. Like it doesn't feel like he's here in October. So I think, September could be the month. It could be the beginning of October too, but the world card being up here, I think is really super significant because its completion is kind of the big theme. Uh, this cycle has ended. It's underneath here. Yeah, giving and receiving of money, repayments of loans and debts. I think this is referring to the moon card. I think things get really volatile, which would be normal with the stock market. If there's a change in leadership all of a sudden, people are hopeful, and yeah, there's a return to balance. And this dark cycle has ended, and we get the card for the Democrats, which by no means the Democrats aren't going to be in control. It's just not the way the Constitution works. It's not the way civics works. I know there's a lot of ideas out there, but it just literally is just not how the laws work. So that can't happen. But I mean, it could happen that, they take over the house and in some weird way if there were a number of deaths or something, but they're not going to take over the White House. Um, there would have to be a series of events for that to happen. Okay, so I think rather than looking at his health in November, let's look at the United States in November. So what's the health of the United States in November? I think he's gone. I really do. I hope I'm right. Um, Now I can be wrong, so you know, timing of these things are really hard. The fall decorations I put more faith in than anything. You know, the images of the tulips really put the time frame for the passing of Pope Francis. So it's the United States. I have to use a different book. Sorry about that. This thick feels a bit. It needs to be cleansed a bit. Show us the US, the health of the US in November. I'm getting the smell of pumpkin pie. This makes sense. Thanksgiving time. I think there'll be a lot of people very grateful. I think there's still, I mean, the US is still going to be in a somewhat of a dark cycle for sure, but it's more predictable. And really, if things are predictable, they're not as scary, right? You know, Vance isn't going to announce a tariff that takes effect next week just off of a whim. One, because he just isn't that person, and two, he he's going to do whatever he can to get elected the next time around. So we get the Two of Pentacles, overseas travel and money. It feels like relationships start to heal. I don't think they're perfect, by the way. I don't think the tariffs get undone right away, but it feels like relationships start to heal. There's more predictability. Vance will not be talking about Canada as the 51st state. All the hoopla over Greenland will be gone, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know he said some of these things to keep the felon happy, but that's all part of his play because, like I've said many times, he's probably worse than the felon in a lot of ways because uh, he will present whatever you want to see. Like he's a charlatan in that sense. Um, yeah, major crossroads, decisions about money, decisions about where we head. Yeah, and the Five of Cups in the upper right loss. This is all consistent. Yeah, burdens in the environment around. Uh, and the Hanged Man, I think this makes perfect sense. People will be waiting to see exactly, like they're not going to trust the first few weeks Vance is there. It's going to take 6 months before they trust. Now, he's not going to gain any supporters that the felon didn't have. That's just not what's going to happen. He's going to lose supporters the felon had. Um, he'll be very unpopular. He'll have very little power. The Queen of Pentacles. Uh, it's like the country is in a better financial place because it's predictable, not because things magically change and go back the way they were before. It's just things are predictable. That's the way it feels. It's like, um, you know, after chapter one comes chapter two. After chapter two comes chapter three. That's not the way it's been because the felon is so crazy. We go from chapter one to chapter 11 to chapter three to chapter seven to chapter two. And it's this whirlwind of chaos. And the story doesn't make sense. Nothing adds up. I don't think that'll be the case anymore. We get the King of Cups. We get the Democrats having more influence. I think this is because some of the Republicans in the House revolt against uh, doing anything big. So therefore, the Democrats have to pass. They need Democrats to pass things. Things going on behind the scenes that we can't see. The High Priestess, and we get the Seven of Wands again, being quite defensive. So more choices about money, in particular foreign trade. Everybody's kind of on their just waiting to see. The administration will be quite defensive about their positions, and I think that's mostly to Republicans, by the way. I think they make Republicans mad. The Democrats have an outsized weight given that they're not in the majority anywhere. And people are waiting to see what happens after the loss. And the loss, of course, is the death of the felon. It's a new opportunity to take a different path, one where the burdens are hard and one where financially we're more stable. And there'll be some influencing behind the scenes. I know a lot of people are worried about Peter Thiel and all this stuff. I just have never seen that. So I know who he is. I know quite a bit about it, but I just have never seen him having that much influence. Messages coming forward, more messages. I think we learn about more deceit and deception. I do think that the Pope does something. I don't know if the Pope just holds a prayer ceremony for the US and the world, something along those lines. And I do think that there is a reset in the Justice Department. We'll get more into that as we go. I don't think Bondi will be there for long. Um, I don't think Hegseth will be there for long either. Like, there'll just be people that Vance gets rid of to put in his own people. Um, There'll be, Republicans are going to feel sabotaged. The spy in the camp, uh, I don't think the spy in the camp's necessarily Vance, but I don't think that he's gonna do some things that the felon wouldn't do that we're not gonna like, and he's gonna undo some of the things that we didn't like that the felon was doing. He's not going to be a good president. Not saying that at all. It's just going to be predictable. People will be prosecuted for committing crimes again. There won't be pardoning of sex sexual assaulters. Just won't. Because Vance is going to have to run again in 28, and he would clearly be the choice for the Republican nomination. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I've always thought that's who it is. But the Democrat's going to win in 28. So it doesn't really matter. And I said that in the last reading. It doesn't matter if the Republican is, the Democrat wins, because the country wants to take a huge U-turn. Like, we got to get off of this ramp. So, all right. Thank you for listening. I'll be back with another.